Well, my text for this morning is taken from the letter to Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1, where it says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Well, if you've read the Bible at all, or for very long, you'll notice that it talks an awful lot about faith. We are, says Paul to the Corinthians, to walk by faith. In Ephesians, he says we are to have faith in God and his promises. Again, to the Romans, he says we are justified. We are put right with God through faith. And if we want to see answers to prayer, then all we need, he says in Mark's Gospel, is the faith the size of a mustard seed. And then in Hebrews 11, verse 6, we're told that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And Jesus in Luke expressed the hope that when he returned, he would still be able to find faith on the earth. So faith then, even from those few references we can see, is of utmost importance. It's central to our Christian experience. But the question I want to ask this morning is, what is faith? What is faith? Is faith, as the atheists tell us, blind, meaning that it's irrational or baseless? Is, as Freud conjectured, is it wishful thinking? A way of dealing with the hardships of life and death itself. Understandable, but not really true. What is faith? Well, our text from this morning seems to offer us a very simple definition of faith, because it says faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not seen. Faith, then, according to this verse, is an inward knowing or a conviction that something we can't see, that is God or heaven or the angels, exists. Faith, according to this definition, is a kind of a feeling. A strong feeling, yes, but nevertheless a feeling. But what if we don't have a feeling? Do we still have faith? Can we still have faith then? Well, although faith certainly does involve conviction, there is more to it than that. And the purpose of verse 1 in Hebrews 11 is really not as an explanation of what faith is, not a definition. It's an introduction to a whole chapter that is given up on the subject of faith. And so the question I want to ask this morning is, what does Hebrews 11 tell us about faith? Does it help us to have a bigger or deeper definition? Well, if we read Hebrews 11, we'll find that faith is about belief. It's an intellectual assent to something. It begins with agreeing, for example, about certain truth, that God exists, for example. And so in 11 verse 4, we're told that without faith it is impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he exists and is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So faith is not faith, at least not the Christian faith, without believing in at least the existence of God and of Christ and of the Holy Spirit. It's only by believing that there is a God, says Hebrews, that we can actually go on then and seek and then to know him. But intellectual assent or agreement, belief on its own, is not enough. What makes me say that? Well, James chapter 2 verse 19 tells me this, because it says here that he says to the people he's writing to, he says, "You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder." So, in other words, even the demons believe in God, but they are hardly what you and I would call Christians. And they would hardly, therefore, be people of faith. I had a curate some years back who was, from the earliest days in Southern Ireland, brought up to go to church by his mum and dad. And he came over to study for a degree in Aberystwyth University. And as a good churchgoer, he sought out the local church in St. Michael's, and he went along. And at some stage, he was invited to a Bible study group. And the Bible study group was studying the letter of James. And then when they had been working away to chapter 2, they came across this verse. You believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. And he said it hit him like a sledgehammer. That all the while he thought he's a good Christian because he believed in God. But so what? Even the demons did that. So what more was there to do then? He believed in God, he went to church, wasn't that enough? But he saw in this verse that there was more. There's more to Christian faith than mere belief. And so he went on and he searched and he was shown the way. He learned the true meaning of faith and he became a Christian. Eventually he came across here, served in the church in Wales, and then went back to Southern Ireland. I believe he's in Airdrie somewhere now. So belief is important, but as we can see from this verse and from my curate's life, then it's not enough. It's not enough in itself. What more then do we need? Well, secondly, belief also must surely, as well as belief, there also must surely be trust, a personal confidence in the person of God. If belief is an intellectual assent in the existence of God, then trust is a personal reliance on God as the object of our confidence. We have faith in God, not just belief about God, but faith in God. And this goes beyond just agreeing about the facts. It means relying on, it means depending on, it means entrusting oneself to God. It's relational. It's a heart-level confidence in God's character, in his promises and his work, especially through Christ. I think Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 puts it perfectly. It says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Trust is something that we commit our whole lives, our whole selves to. We trust him with all our heart, just as we love with all our heart. True faith means entrusting the whole of our lives to God. It's leaning on God. The Puritans used to say it's like a weak person leaning on a strong arm. It means abandoning our self-reliance. It means not leaning on ourselves, but leaning on God. In him we put our confidence. We lean on him to help and to guide us and to show us the way. A few months back, I took the funeral service of a friend. I'd known Bev for 45 years. And it was no ordinary friend. It was through him I came to faith. Again, like my curate, to a Bible study. And when he went forward for the ministry, I felt God nudging me to do the same, to follow him, in other words. Well, 4 or 5 months back now, he started to have a nagging pain in his back and went to see the doctors, only discovered that he had cancer and it had progressed too far and was incurable. And when the consultants in the hospital came into the room and broke the news to him, telling him how very sorry they were and there was not much they could do for him, then my friend, in typical humour but also deep faith, said to them, "Look, don't worry about me. I know where I'm going. It's you lot I feel sorry for. You're stuck with this Labour government." Bev knew where he was going because he had faith in Jesus as the way and the truth and the life. He had trusted and followed wherever Jesus had led him in his life. And now, at the end, he would continue to trust and follow him into the next. Saying that he knew where he was going was not arrogance. It was confidence, not in himself, but in God. He had faith in Jesus. He leaned on Jesus. And so we find in Hebrews 11 a roll call of men and women of faith down through the Old Testament who had put their trust in God down the years through very difficult and telling circumstances. You need to read the Old Testament just to see how wonderful these men and women were of faith. There's a long list of them: Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, countless and mostly anonymous other believers down the ages who put their faith in God. Who nevertheless, because even though they did not see him, yet they believed and trusted in him with the whole of their hearts. They had faith in him. And so we have this recurring thing, by faith and so on. So faith then is about belief, which is an intellectual assent. It's also trust, a personal knowledge, a reliance, a leaning on God. And finally, faith is action. It's action. In the letter to James, we find this definition of faith, which, like Hebrews 11, is not really complete in itself, but it's an important component of it. When he says this, do you not know that faith without works is dead? In other words, it's not really faith. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works, meaning deeds or action, faith without works is dead also. He then goes to give some examples, as does the writer of the Hebrews, and includes again Abraham, who is known as a friend of God. You see, what he's trying to say is anyone can claim to believe to say they believe and trust in God. But unless it's expressed in some tangible way, devotion to God, worship, good deeds, acts of kindness, giving to the poor, unless we express it in some way, it's not really biblical faith. It's all in your head. It's all talk. What James is saying, therefore, faith is an idea until it's really expressed by action. By action. We are to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. I think this is illustrated by something you probably would have heard mentioned sometimes before. It's a story about Charles Blondin. And Charles Blondin was a famous 19th century tightrope walker. He once apparently walked across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. And he didn't just walk across once, he did it many, many times with all kinds of variations. He walked across it blindfolded, he walked across it on stilts, he walked across it carrying a stove, and even cooking an omelette in the very middle. And the story goes one day that after impressing the crowd with his stunts, he said, does anyone here believe I can walk across this rope with a wheelbarrow? And having seen all the other stuff he did, they of course shouted out, yes, yes. So he asked again, well, do you believe I can carry a person in the wheelbarrow across the road? And everyone says, absolutely, yes, we believe, yes, absolutely. And then he pointed to someone who had been enthusiastically cheering the crowd. He said, okay, get in. And at that moment, everything changed. Because that person believed in theory. But when it came to the practice, no. In other words, his faith went so far, but didn't go all the way. It was not wholehearted, because it didn't lead to action. You see, trusting with God with all your heart means more than just saying you believe. It means handing over control. It means stepping off the ledge and letting God guide and carry you, even when the rope looks narrow and the fall looks deadly. It means leaning the whole of your weight of your life on him and acting accordingly. But the thing is, you see, faith is not something that you can conjure up. I remember towards the end of his life, my father, in a moment of uncharacteristic self-revelation, because he was of the era that didn't talk much about feelings and things like that. I don't think he hugged me until I was ordained, really, which for 30-odd years. I remember him telling me one time, admitting that he wished that he had faith as I did. He told me that he wanted to believe. He wanted to have faith in God, but didn't have it. But I think the thing is about it, and I was always reflecting back, that at least he was honest about this, and that he wanted it. And I think that's a good place to start. If you feel you don't have faith, then the best place to start is to want it. In Hebrews 11 verse 4 it says this: without faith it's impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he exists and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him, who diligently seek him, actually the word is. And I think the writer may well be remembering something from Jeremiah chapter 29. God makes this incredible promise in Jeremiah chapter 29. He says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me, and you will find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord." So if you don't have faith, if you don't feel you have faith, you struggle to believe, then what God says to us is seek me, seek me. Just, if you want to pretend that I exist, but then go and look. Diligently search, because all those who search me with all their heart will eventually find me. So here is faith then. It's an orbed thing. It's not just belief, it's also trust. It's not just belief and trust, it's also action. Faith is central, not only to Christian life, but to pleasing God. I pray that those of you who have faith, that it will grow stronger, and those that don't will diligently seek for it. Amen.